Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for being here. The family of Blanche Stark, Ella Blanche Miller Stark, thanks you. I'm Anita Leashai, the youngest. My brother Kerwin. Janice, oh yes, my sister Janice. She should be up here, but. And to our long-suffering spouses, Jim and Dawn and Kay, we thank you. Of Mom's 8 grandkids, 5 could be here. Jill from California, Denise from Switzerland, Kelsey from Colorado, Paul and Christina from Ontario. I think in the camera we know Jessica's watching from Nashville. Steve, who just had a baby boy born yesterday, is watching from West Virginia. And Sarah is watching from Colorado. So we decided to lead this by the family because Mom has outlasted most of the pastors that meant something to her. She has outlasted most of her bankers, her friends, and so we decided that we would try to lead this service as much as possible with Mom's words or the lessons she has taught us. It has been difficult to plan this service, as you can see, with scratch, and I'll try to rattle like my sister. But anyways, I've done the introductions. Now I'm going to the next page. I wrote this months ago when we didn't know if Mom was going to ever make it to her 100th or even past. On one of my last visits, Mom began to be weepy, and I couldn't explain why. When I said I would try not to be weepy and that I enjoyed being with her regardless, she answered, "You have done more than you signed up for." Her children were not everything to her, but our lives helped fill hers. She was grateful when we gathered in February, and she was so happy we all got along then. Our mom was always beautiful. She was a beautiful woman through all of her ages, from her youth with her raven hair to a young mother with braided hair to the white-haired matriarch she has been for these past many years. Her idea of wearing makeup was a dab of red rouge and some fire engine red lipstick. She knew education was very important, and she insisted, along with our dad, that we all pursue post-high school. She herself was constantly expanding her knowledge. Once in Washington Woods, she said, "If I could, I would just stay in my room all day and watch TV." Well, what did she watch? C-SPAN. Who watches C-SPAN? News on all channels because you needed to know all sides. She'd listen to Midland concerts, book reviews, oversight hearings in Congress. Never movies or TV series. She did have one memory associated with a TV program called Queen for the Day. She wrote a letter into the program on a lark that she might win her wish, which, if Queen for the Day, I would wish for a bed made with clean sheets dried on the clothesline each night. Jack Bailey never got to interview Mom for that request, but she hung her sheets out on her long 4-line deep clothesline and made her dream come true some nights. If not watching TV, she was reading the newspaper, conservation journals, Reader's Digest, National Geographic, Country Living, letters from politicians, newsletters from her Women's History Museum, or from her Daughters of the Union chapters, or writing editorials to the Midland Daily News. She belonged to the Nonviolent Peace Force with Joy and Dorothy Arthur. She was an advocate for Midland, volunteering at the Michigan Medical Center, Midland County Historical Society, Midland Democratic Party, Homer United Methodist Church, and the Chippewa Nature Center. She had some treasured friends who helped her navigate being alone after Dad died. Sandy Simmons and Joy and Dorothy Arthur, or all the Arthurs, being her most common comrades, and Sally Gombosi, who started working for her back on the farm and has been a faithful companion and friend this past decade. And friends of her children have also become her friends and written and visited to her. One of her blue hats, which was sent during her campaign leading up to her 100th, described Mom as a luminary. She thought, I like that word. Her interview with Dan Chalk for the front page appearance after her 100th started with her asking him, how are you doing? Because she knew he had lost his wife. And she knew he had a son, had a daughter who was in grade 5, and Mom asked, and how is she doing? How she remembered these details when she herself was living with the challenges of being 100 is truly remarkable. Her campaign of blue hats with people's memories revealed much about Mom's life as others saw it. They recalled her delicious peach blueberry pies, her potato pancakes, her joy in doing crossword puzzles or playing euchre with family and friends, her preaching about voting as a right and an obligation. She loved feisty political discussions. The blueberry patch was mentioned many times as not only were the berries and company good, but the tranquil surroundings of that patch on 5 Mile were always a balm to the stressed soul. One of her recent proverbs that she made me laugh about, poor Ashlyn is the one that got stung by a yellow jacket. But anyways, I had told her on the phone, I had just gotten stung by a yellow jacket myself. And Mom thought, she said, yes, beware of the pesky yellow jacket on the underside of a lovely pear. I thought that's a good way to summarize life, the good and the bad. So as we begin this service, I would ask, there are several great-grandchildren here as well, and I would ask Ashlyn Hudson to come up and read the prayer that is on the front of our program today. It was from her beloved Methodist hymn book, and Dag Hammarskjöld was important to the UN. Janice will correct me later, but anyways. Ashlyn Hudson, my oldest granddaughter, and you may join with her.
Prayer for a new heart. Thou who art over us, thou who art one of us, thou who art. Give me a pure heart that I may see thee, a humble heart that I may hear thee, a heart of love that I may serve thee, a heart of faith that I may abide in thee. Amen.
So following, we would like to ask Denise up to read Ecclesiastes, which was read at our dad's funeral, a man of all seasons.
A reading from Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace.
This is spontaneous, but Jill, could you lead the Let There Be Peace just up front so somebody is here at the podium? And we would like everybody to sing with us. The words are on the other page. So Jill is not singing alone, and I will try to tickle the ivories. Of course, the song was chosen because it was one of Mom's favorites, and because today is D-Day, I think it's so appropriate. So let's remember peace.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God our Creator, children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me, and let it fill moment now. With every step I take, please me my solemn vow to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
And I would ask my brother to come and share his finest writing.
Well, the little segue about the Yellow Jackets is kind of a segue to this. I was weed whacking in the blueberry patch. This was years ago, before Mother's 90th. And I'm whacking away, and I buzz right over the hole of a ground hornet nest. And not being very smart, not like my mother, I just kept the weed whacker on, and the bees zeroed in on that, and I know some of them stung the weed whacker. And then pretty soon they found out that I was a much softer target. And so I ran away 3 or 4 bushes, didn't shut off the weed whacker, thought I was safe, was looking at the sky and feeling the bumps on my head, and they zeroed in on me again. And this is going to be quite a lengthy story, but you have to know me. So I ran, and I ran clear over to the east side of the blueberry patch, and I thought I was safe. And I started up the weed whacker again, and the dirty, rotten sons of guns followed me. And they were really mad by then. Anyway, I went into an asthma attack. And if you've been to our blueberry patch, I was in the far south end, and the north end is what I had to get to be able to walk back to the house. And I couldn't walk. I dropped the weed whacker, and I was crawling, and I was, I got to the north end. I found the shade of a tree. I sat down. I happened to have my cell phone. And I thought, well, I better call Mom to come save my butt. I called. She didn't answer. I called. She didn't answer. Between the wheezes, I shouted, Mom. She didn't answer. I thought, who can I call? I called Dale Crowder. I happened to have his phone number in my phone. No answer. Then I called Leonard Varner. I didn't have his number, but for some reason I remembered it. No answer. And so I said, well, I'll try Mom one more time, and then I'll have to crawl to the house. I dialed the home phone, and she answered, and I said, Mom, you better come out to the Blu-ray, get me. And she said, I wasn't there, so I can't see this, but I know what she did. She said, Kerwin Leonard Stark, what have you done? So I told her I'd been stung by bees and I needed her to come get me. And I heard the screen door on the house slam shut, heard the door open to the car, heard the Mercury roar up. She backed out into the road, I'm guessing. Anyway, she came roaring out to get me, and she jumped out of the car to come help me, and I thought, what's this little tiny white woman going to do with a 230-pound guy? So anyway, I crawled to the door, and I got in, and off we went. Well, I got to the emergency room, and I got a shot of prednisone, adrenaline, Benadryl, I don't know what else. So that night, after the prednisone started to wear off, I wrote this. And I read this at Mother's 90th birthday party. Mother's hands. Hands tell so much about a person, especially moms. Hands can be small and round, large and powerful, thin and supple, manicured and painted, worn out and bumpy. Mother's hands are any and all combinations of the above. My mom's hands are large as women's hands go. The fingers are long and well-formed and very powerful. The nails are clean, well-formed, and shaped modestly. The back of her hands are tracked with the most beautiful veins. The color is that beautiful blue-green with the summer tan, the bold glow of health and tan in the summer months, and a subtle, and a subtle painting of light beige in the winter months. Her palms have, to this day, signs of hard work and discipline and are pink, except where the calluses are. Mom's hands were used sparingly for discipline. I suspect hardly ever in anger, perhaps more in desperation. Her hands could coax a tune from the upright piano, gently wipe tears from cheeks, and wipe a dirty and sore nose without causing pain. Those hands could wash and scald the cream separator in 5 to 7 minutes, and then scrape the ice from the windshield and drive to work at school. Her hands could pass out tests, gather work papers, hold some little girl or boy's head while they were sick in the toilet. These hands of hers wrote and typed out assignments, notes, report cards, and then at home prepare dinner, pull out some can, of course home canned, of vegetables or meat, or perhaps a frozen package she had helped prepare. Late summer nights could find us trying to keep up to the speed of her shelling or snapping of peas and beans while talking and listening to Bonanza. Her gentle hands could wash a cut or scrape and pull gravel out of abraded thighs, buttocks, and tweeze a stubborn sticker or sliver from toes and feet and fingers. Those hands did have trouble pulling off bandages and Band-Aids. Those hands of hers did have trouble with lots of blood and rusty nails. Mom's hands could pin a diaper on one of her grandchildren as if she had done it thousands of times and in her sleep. Those hands could raise a body from a nap and support the baby's head and body in perfect combination. Her hands could wash eggs in record time, churn and work and mold butter, peel peaches and apples, sterilize jar lids, and wash a thermos bottle. Her hands could braid her long, long hair and fashion her hair into the most distinctive style, and then put on a polka dot dress and look great. These are mother's hands. Ella Blanche, my mother, is being buried today. Your mother's hands look different, but I'll bet just the same. Thank you.
We didn't give Kelsey a choice. We're making Kelsey read Mom's valedictorian speech that she gave in 1941. We hear that Kelsey was the valedictorian too. This is why he got the job.
Hello. In 1941, Ella Blanche Miller was given the honor of being named the valedictorian of her graduating class. And then in May of 2000, I was given the honor of being the valedictorian of my graduating class. And this was a special bond that Grandma and I shared. And when I was asked to give a speech, I didn't think much of it. I asked my classmates what they wanted out of my speech, and the unanimous answer was brevity. So we could get out of that gym. It was hot and uncomfortable, so I said, okay. So I kind of squandered an opportunity, but I'm being given a second chance to read something a little more profound and meaningful. So, safeguarding democracy. Tonight, you and I are very much interested in promoting the general welfare, providing for the common defense, and keeping the blessings of liberty. Education is fundamental to the democratic state. Although education has been considered an essential to democracy at any time and at any place, under present conditions, in the modern world, it has taken on the highest importance. In modern war, it is the first line of defense. We know that just any education will not do. A thorough and universally learned program of civic education alone will not do. Education adequate to protect democracy against the foreign enemy in modern times must not only be universal, must not only attack the problems of government and civic life, but it must deeply and truly convince all of the people that they are first, as individuals, members of a great human procession, marching to a goal so noble that we shall cease to think about what we can get, but what we can give. If we are able to get and yet not enjoy, there is no advantage in getting. The American stock is, and has always been, interested in liberty. You recall that our wars have been for liberty in the past. Equal to the danger from without is the danger of ignorance, prejudice, and susceptibility from within. It is the job of education in defending democracy to clean its own doorsteps and develop straight-thinking people whose attention is drawn away from self and focused on all humanity. If democracy is worth having, then it is worth defending. Thank you.
I get the Blanchisms, and that was a term that was created at King's Daughters. Mom was remembered as a good listener, and she had much practice living with Philip Stark. But she also gave sage advice, and anyways, years ago, maybe 3, I was talking to Kerwin on the phone, and I know Mom was not wanting to make it to her 98th, not make it to her 99th, not make it to her 100th. And he said, you know, Mom just seems to be one of those people that is willing to get up every morning and face a new day with happiness. So I shared this with Mom on the phone a couple days later, and she thought and said, well, not right away. When Mom fell in January of 2022, Faye, where are you? So Faye and Sandy were faithful visitors from Homer. And Mom had a nativity collection that she always left out, and she had wanted to leave it out until all the visitors had come. So after she had buzzed Faye and Sandy in, she turned, fell, bonked her head against the wall, and they found her on the floor bleeding. And while she was down on the floor, she said, well, you might as well go look at the nativity sets. That's what you came for. And her other positive was, check off the bucket list. I got my first ride in an ambulance. Upon her fall at Washington Woods in May of 22nd, as she was taken to hospital in her second ambulance ride, she talked to the emergency staff and asked, is Dr. Kevorkian still practicing? She had often expressed the desire to be at King's Daughters home. She loved that place. We used to deliver blueberries to the back door. We had taken a tour there, hoping that maybe that would be where she'd spend her last few years. This wasn't the way she wanted to come, but anyway, she's been at King's Daughters since June of 22. She had her opinions about which staff understood her. I want to make sure I don't misquote, but anyways, a couple weeks ago, she had said, I just want to be cooperative. She said, I don't want to be, what did my mother call me? A little Israelite. So, we know that's not politically correct. A King's Daughters home staff, Angie, again recently asked, Blanche, is there anything I can do to make you more comfortable? Yes, but it's not legal. Her last lunch in the dining room at King's Daughters, a nurse asked as we were headed back to the room, Blanche, do you want anything for anxiety? No, I think I have enough of that. Rose and Mom had a special relationship. They kind of were the yin and yang of each other. And in these last few days, Mom never said anything too harsh. It was like, oh, brother, or for heaven's sake. So the last time Rose was changing her, she said, for heaven's sakes, just let me die. And Rose answered her, well, Blanche, I'm not in that business. And Marty, another wonderful caregiver, said as she was changing her robe and cleaning her up, I don't like to be paraded. Jessica, who's watching, all of my kids got to say their goodbyes by the bedside, and I'm very grateful. But we left Jessica alone while we went out for dinner, left her alone beside Mom, and she's got 2 young children, and she said, you know, it's kind of nice to just sit beside somebody and just talk and ramble on, and nobody's going to interrupt you and say, Mom, Mom. And so Jessica got to say that Mom was her hero, that the night that Jessica was getting cold feet about going off to medical school in Ireland, Mom told her the story about coming from Oklahoma. But one of the things Jessica told her was, Grandma, I always think of blueberries, and I want to do something special to remember you, and I was thinking I was going to do something blueberries, like a tattoo, blueberry, branches or blueberry flowers or whatever, and she kept rambling about this blueberry tattoo, and Mom slightly leaned over and said, "Blueberry what?" We had a visit 2 years ago. Mom and I came here to make sure that Craig Pickelman knew that she wanted a turquoise liner, an aqua liner to this casket. Of course, the casket was going to be an oak one. And Craig just said, well, that color's not available anymore. And Mom got her teacher finger up and said, "I will haunt you if you don't find that." Well, I think Craig upped that, and he got a beautiful casket for our mom who loved turquoise. And when we came a week ago to make final arrangements, in Mom's file was one piece of paper. And on that paper was handwritten her memories that she wrote March 19th, 2011. So it is on the sunset cover, which is a picture of Lake Munising provided to us again by King's Daughter's staff, Tammy. And I would like us to read together her words. "I've always loved sunsets, so why should I fear the sunset of life? Red sails at night, sailor's delight. So I need to watch for the red sails that promise a better day tomorrow than today. At the end of each day is the promise of a new dawn. I hope I've lived my sunset years in a way that each of you inspired to look for the red sails that promise a glorious day for each tomorrow." I would ask our dear Sally Gambosi to tell you the significance of the song, "I Believe," and then we will sing it. We will try.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sally, Blanche's friend and personal helper. It has been such a blessing and an honor to know and work and grow alongside of Blanche all these years. Blanche and I have had a lot of things to talk about over time, and our latest conversation centered around faith, life, and afterlife. I asked her what her thoughts were about this. She paused and then began to recite the words to the song, "I Believe." A favorite of hers, the words simple and sweet, and straight to the heart of what she believed. The song, "I Believe," is shared with you today and sung by her granddaughter, Jill. Can I sit with you? Okay.
But nobody will be up there.
Oh.
So we'll sing loudly as well.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night, a candle glows. I believe for everyone who goes astray, someone will come to show the way. I believe, I believe above the storm, the smallest prayers will still be heard. I believe that someone in the great somewhere hears every word. So this is something that I am just impromptu going to say about my grandma. So I was in the Peace Corps in Africa, and the plan was that my grandma was going to come and visit me. And things didn't work out that way. So I was medevaced, and I came home unexpectedly. And I guess I carried a bit of guilt about that for so many years, that my grandma never got a chance to go to Africa. But now that I look back, I think we wouldn't probably be standing here and celebrating her at 100 years old. It would have been pretty rough on her, I'm thinking. So I do remember calling her first when I got home. And she had some good advice. She basically said, pick yourself up and move on. And her advice for being happy, one time I asked, she said, be happy with what you have, not with what you want. And that was her. And I guess the last thing that I have learned from her is that she was amazing at sending letters. She never forgot you. And she wanted to travel, I know that. But in many ways, she has her grandkids all over the place, and so many friends, so many people who are family to her. And I will miss receiving those letters in the mail for her. But I guess I'll be that person, and maybe we can all step up, and I will fill those shoes if I can, and try to remember those that I love and keep that tradition moving on. So, thank you.
They were a size 10 and a half. She was always embarrassed about that. So this is the time that we wanted to have anyone who wished to share. I know you don't want to stay here all day, but I think for the live streaming, we would ask if you would come up, if possible, and if not, we can bring the mic to you. But I see Kay coming first.
When our first child was born, Sarah had to deal with two working parents, and Blanche retired and became our daycare. And so she saved us and bonded. Sarah bonded with her very tightly. Kelsey didn't stay around long enough to have Grandma, but for a few months before we moved. And she would always wake Sarah up by spelling her name. And this is an email from Sarah. I can smell the chili on the stove, always ready for our arrival. The table set, cottage cheese a staple. Upstairs rooms ready with beds turned down waiting for us. The fight for the blue room. Why don't I put on the glasses that I can see? My two oldest girls continue the fight when we came to visit. The little white-haired woman standing on the porch, waiting, waving, and ready for hugs. And oh, the garden. As I grew up, she was always excited to show off that garden, wandering around, hands clasped behind her back, telling me what was planted and why. As I got older, so did she. The farm was sold and she moved to town, but still had her balcony of plants. She would still lead me around, showing me the trees and plants at her new home in town. The Nature Center was another place she loved to show. Again, hands clasped behind her back. I will never forget her passion and love of nature, from picking blueberries to the last hike around the canopy in Midland. I haven't had a famous blueberry muffin in years, but I remember the taste and smell. I learned a lot from my grandma, loving of gardening and baking, and how to get through those hard times alone. I miss you already, but I'm so grateful that you are finally at peace and rest. Well, there's a nice, long Michigan Stark goodbye from your granddaughter, S-A-R-A-H.
Well, Ann stood up first, Lowell.
Ladies first.
Oh, grade 1 student. She's,
But I apologize for my outfit.
your food coming after is prepared by this lady.
This isn't rehearsed, so please bear with me. I'm not sure if I see other people out there, but I am Ann McLaughlin, and I represent one of the many of Mrs. Stark's children that she taught. So, let's suck it up, Mrs. Stark, tell the story. I wanted to share that for me, my life is measured very much in food memories. It's what I do, it's who I am. And Mrs. Stark was literally my first food memory. First grade, the story of stone soup. I loved it. I loved her stories. I remember my contribution was potatoes, and I remember my mom taking me to the store and picking out those potatoes and sitting in one of those little chairs and trying to figure out how to peel that potato and cut it up, and all the other kids had their little parts. And Mrs. Stark having that pot boiling, showing us what that story meant. I literally remember the smell as it started to bubble with that stove in it. She was an amazing woman who made everybody feel special. I can fast forward to last fall, right? Was it 100?
Yes.
Yes. I had the privilege, and I thank you. I've had the privilege to be able to cook for her 90th, her 95th, her 99th, and thank God her 100th. And I got to visit with her after that. And she truly is an amazing woman who remembers everybody in such minute details. She literally took her time with me at 100 years old, and it amazes me. Made me feel so special because she remembered from first grade throughout my life. Remember, I played ball. She remembered how much I loved my mother and how much I missed her. Remembered when I moved down the road from her and dropped off some cans of beef vegetable soup. She did not, however, seem to remember when she scolded me when she came to my restaurant and I served her ham and bean soup. And she said to me, Annie, and I went over and she asked Mrs. Stark, it's bean and ham soup. You're supposed to stretch the ham. You have too much ham in here. I'm like, all right, sorry, Mrs. Stark. So, well, aren't we all just blessed for the life of Blanche Stark? That's it. Thank you. Thank you guys for keeping me in this family. And thanks to everybody that loves such a beautiful woman.
I'm not an extemporaneous speaker, however.
But you could sing it.
I became a friend of Blanche because of my first marriage to Gertie Varner. And she was a very close friend of the Varner family. But later on, I got to know her much better. I am a member of the Men of Music, and we every spring we performed a spring show, which was kind of full of cornball humor, which Blanche seemed to enjoy. But every spring, at that time, early on, the men of the group were in charge of selling tickets, promoting the show. And so every spring, I would meet with Blanche. She'd always I'd call her. She'd say, yes, I would like some tickets. And so we'd go down, and I planned at least a 2-hour visit. And it was so good and so refreshing. And I loved that woman from the first time I met her. I just regret that in these final years that I didn't visit her as often, but I know Gertie, my first wife, loved her, and Ann met her and loved her too. But nothing but good memories about Blanche Stark. And I will never forget them. And Kerwin, I got to know quite well because he was a close friend of my niece who lived next door to me, who was a classmate of his in school, and they became good friends, and we've had that relationship too. And with Anita, who accompanied me on a cello for weddings, and I guess we could just say, I love you all.
Thank you, Lowell. Keep singing.
I still do.
I could hear you. Thank
People
you.
are closing their ears when I get up, though, and some leave the room. But I still pursue.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not, okay.
I'm Jim Welch, and I'm from Illinois, and I'm married to Janice, the oldest daughter. And when we got engaged, I was a nervous wreck. We came up from Illinois, and Blanche welcomed me, and Phil I had to get used to. But anyway, Blanche loved baseball, and we went to 3 or 4 Michigan Loons games. She loved it. And Janice didn't go, she didn't like it, and I said, well, hey. So I had a date with my mother-in-law. And she was classy, she was fabulous, and I didn't think I'd get emotional, but I have been. And the last time we went out, we went downtown Midland a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and we got back, we had a nice time, and they had a piano player that came to the conference room at the home, and I said, well, Blanche, do you go to these musicals? No. And I said, why not? And she goes, sometimes I get evil thoughts. And we hooted. I couldn't believe it. And I told Jan, I said, your mother is a riot. And we had just a wonderful laugh about it. And I said, well, you need an attitude adjustment. And she says, so after that, she'd tell Jan, she says, tell Jim that I'm trying to work on my attitude. Anyway, I love you, Blanche.
Thank you, Jim. Brevity.
My name is Don Leascheid, proud son-in-law to Blanche and Phil Stark. About 2 weeks ago, we live on a farm, of course, in a little village of Woodsley, and I was, of course, given the privilege of managing the farm by myself, which is shocking, by the way. I had just finished feeding the horses and Anita's 2 minis, and I was on the way to feed the hens and the baby chicks. I was fast-tracking through the farmhouse, and the phone rang at about 7:30 in the morning, about 2 weeks ago. And Anita was calling, because I could tell, and she said, Don, I'm with Mom, and I want you to tell her a story, a true story this time. Well, it didn't take me too long. I have told stories before, and this one was going to be true. And Blanche was there. She said, Don, Blanche can hear you. So go slow, and I did. I said, Blanche, do you remember the day that I came up to the farm for the first time to ask Philip's blessing for Anita's hand in marriage? I was, of course, in awe, a little nervous. Halfway up to Midland, God said to me, Don, are you sure you know what you're doing? And I said, well, listen, Lord, I can't turn back now. I finally made my way, got lost in the process, but I finally made my way to 5 Mile Road, the Stark farmhouse. And that Friday evening, I had a chance to sit down with Phil. I said, Phil, I'm here to ask your blessings for your daughter's hand in marriage. And after we get married, I would like Anita to become a Canadian citizen. And Phil said, let's not rush too quickly here. Don, let's just take one thing at a time. I said, thank you. The following morning was Saturday morning, and I got up, as I always do, early, went down to the kitchen. Everyone was there, Anita. I think the whole family was there to greet this Canadian, my God, coming up from Canada to Michigan. And Blanche was there, and I looked around, and I said, is breakfast ready? And Blanche looked around and said, Anita, Don looks like he's hungry. So I think you should probably whip up some breakfast. And she did, Anita did. As I recall, it was bacon, eggs, toast, and blueberry jam. We had a lovely day. I, of course, had to pick blueberries for the whole day, that day on Saturday, until my fingers almost fell off. The following morning, of course, was Sunday. Came down again early in the morning, looked around, looked for breakfast. I said, Blanche, is breakfast being served? She said, Don, you're on your own from now on in. And I must tell you, I have been on my own from now on in. Now, wait a second. Wait a second.
Brevity.
After I made that comment, I heard Blanche say to me, Don, yes, thank you. And I said, Godspeed. And that was the last I spoke to my mother-in-law. I've loved her ever since. And I also believe that brevity is the essence of wit. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to whoever wants to come up here.
That was short by Don's standards. Oh, okay, Cousin Doug.
Let me say what a wonderful memorial service. Thank you to all the family, Anita especially, Kerwin, Janice. I'm Doug DeLine. Aunt Blanche, of course, was my aunt. And I have many, many fond memories. It's already been mentioned, her bravery, getting on that train, all of her possessions in a trunk and coming to Midland all by herself. Amazing. I noticed too the mention she loved music, the men of music, concerts. When we were, my wife and I, attending a concert, we would sometimes see down in the audience this beautiful white head of hair. And we knew Blanche was there that night. You could always tell her hair. It was wonderful. My family especially was blessed by Blanche. My sister especially was practically raised, I believe, by Blanche, and I think you too, Anita, when my own mother was unable to care for her the way a mother has to care for her daughter. And I'll always be grateful for that. Myself, we had many, many wonderful experiences. I wrote about one in the Blue Hat Project. It was in the 50s. Blanche, I don't know if this had been planned or not, but there were Janice and Kerwin, myself, and my brother. And she loaded us into the Oldsmobile one day and took us to Lansing to tour the Oldsmobile plant. One woman, 4 children alone, heading across the country. Talk about brave. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And we have many, many blessings to thank her for. And thank you for this service, everybody who participated.
I'm going to protect my sister and ask her, she's got the horrible job of cleanup, summarize up Mom's reflections, of Mom's life. Is that okay? Are you ready to? Oh, what did I forget? You're right, Lila. I think we're going to be here a long time. There's a reception afterwards. I think we can share with family there at that point, if that's okay. So Lila, who's got a lovely broken arm from gymnastics, is going to lead us in Mom's favorite psalm. And yeah, we're going to get low. No, sorry, thank you.
Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Thank you,
Okay, get the stopwatch. I went to the library a couple of days ago, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to take all of my information from a book that Mom and I were able to do after the 90th birthday. And my sister said, Janice, where are you going to end with that? And I go, you're right, I do have a time limit. So she said, why don't you use what you wrote for the 90th birthday? And I looked at it and I go, oh my gosh, I still feel the same way. I still have learned all of those wisdoms, and I said it at the 90th birthday, so I will repeat what I said on the 90th birthday. Nothing has changed. I still feel the same way. On returning home from a summer visit, I stopped at an antique store. You know, that is my addiction. So I saw a huge coin display, and I go, that's what I'm going to use for my chapters. So I used the coins that were in existence in 1923 when Mom was born. That would be the wheat penny, the buffalo nickel, the mercury dime, the standing liberty quarter, the walking liberty 50-cent piece, and the peace silver dollar. So that's what I used as my outline. So for the wheat penny, as a child, there is nothing more fabulous after you've walked a long 1.25 miles from a country school to smell bread baking. Oh, not just any bread, whole wheat bread. And if you're really good and you wash your hands and you put away your clothes, which I forgot one, I was 1 for 2, and I could have whole wheat bread, 1 slice, and I could put warm butter, which melted, and I could have honey on the whole wheat bread. That was before supper, and that's all I could get. When I did the booklet with Mom, her recollection of wheat, because I used the same same outline when we did Sandhills, her recollection of wheat was, well, I didn't grow in the epicenter. I wasn't in the epicenter of the Dust Bowl, but all of Oklahoma suffered. My dad was able to get a job with the federal government, and his job was to make sure that the wheat farmers did not go over their allotment of growing wheat. we had to keep the price higher. That might have been good for farmers, but for sharecroppers, it did nothing. We suffered too. When I talked about Buffalo nickel, my recollection was the wonderful, well, I'll just say this. If you're looking at the territory that a buffalo could cover in the old days of the United States or America, the territory was unbelievable. And that's what I remembered from Mom. We were able to see Mesa Verde. We were able to see the Upper Peninsula. We were able to see capitals of Minnesota, Iowa, all with Mom at the wheel with her little bonnet and her nervous little thumbs on the steering wheel. But she was able to take us on all sorts of journeys so that myself, I could see the Mesa Verde, I could envision the Anasazi Indians. I could wonder, why did they leave? And it was just fascinating. And then I would hear Mom talk about her history of a childhood. She walked home from a country school, cut through Corbett's pasture, went on the road where the buffalo wallows were. And I was fascinated, and I go, why did you call them buffalo wallows? Because that's where the buffalo wallowed. Okay, I got it. When I talked about mercury dime, Mom never just said it was 60 degrees or 22 degrees. She always said, well, the mercury said it's 90 degrees. It's a hot, humid day. Or, the mercury said it's 10 degrees below zero. I fed those cats in a hurry this morning. I'm going to be inside getting some things done in the house. And I enjoyed that. It was just fun listening to Mom's, the mercury said. When I go to standing liberty and walking liberty, the key word is liberty. And I'm going to read what I wrote in 2013 at her 90th birthday. I feel the same way today. The quarter and half dollar were the standing liberty and the walking liberty. My connection to these coins and things you, my mother, have demonstrated yesterday and today was and is your great love of your freedom. More importantly is your great respect for others' liberty. I have never heard you call great attention to those who believe differently. Your respect for other cultures and religions reflects a great tolerance for the liberty and pursuit of happiness. Today, June 6th, 2024, I still feel the same way. I'm going to also use what I said in 2013. I saved the best for last. In 1921, the peace silver dollar was issued at the honor of a war to end all wars. We know it didn't achieve that purpose, but you have held peace as a goal always to be held high. I respect, and I still respect, that you were able and willing to publicly state your views on the goal of peace, not a peace at any cost, but a peace as the highest result of dialogue and negotiation. You've reminded me, Mother, and I still hear this. You reminded me many times in my childhood, now, Janice, don't keep the pot boiling. Or, Janice, just consider the source. Your peaceful nature has influenced my mothering beliefs yesterday, today, and forever. Thank you, Mother.
I got here 2 weeks ago today. Mom could communicate a little, and it went downhill from there. Got quite emotional, and one morning I just was trying to talk to her. And anyway, I grabbed a piece of paper and I started writing this. And I titled it Passing On. And I wrote this from, I think, Mother's point of view. Lay me down on the bed of fresh-cut grass. Let me feel the tickle of a breeze, the tiny feet of an ant crawling across my ears. Let me sense the warmth of the sun, interspersed with the cool shadows of leaves from the ash tree. Let me see the shimmer of the gentle motion of the leaves overhead. Let me hear the chorus of the blue jay and the jenny wren. Let me wander this universe now, with all these senses and memories and visions. Let me go, let me go.
Do you think all the great-grandkids could come up here and we'll lead everybody in the Johnny Appleseed? There is a reception afterwards. Annie McLaughlin has made some wonderful food for everybody who will stay, and of course there will be popcorn. And this has become the tradition for any time we'd gather with Grandma. We'd sing that Johnny Appleseed song, and I know some families hold hands. That's your comfort level. If you want to hold hands, anybody can, yep. All right. Oh, the Lord's been good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The Lord's been good to me. Johnny Appleseed, amen. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to those watching.
Great job.
Just have a seat just for a moment. This concludes all services. Like was mentioned, we do have a little gathering that everyone is welcome to in our what's called our Wilson room. As you exit out, our staff will direct you to where it's at. Burial will be later on this afternoon. If you wish to pass by the open casket, you may do so now, and then you can step out. We're going to start in this room first, and then I'll start in the back of the main chapel to come forward. Family will go by last. Thank you. If you wish to step by the open casket, we'll have you do so, and then we'll have you step right out.